Hello everyone, welcome back to another tech video on my channel. We were discussing about few different topics, right? So like GraphQL, Angular, NestJS. So why I don't complete one topic and why I am switching between topics? Because if I start to continue one topic, then you will get bored, right? So now you can have your front end, you can have your back end, and you can have your GraphQL and everything. Anyway, today I'm going to show you one of the most important part on service development, that is validation and error handling, right? So why validation is important? Validation is so important because this can enable so many problems to our application. Not the enable, it can create so many problems to our application. It can be security vulnerability like a cross-site scripting, right? It can be security breaches. It can be user create unnecessary data or user fetch unnecessary data. So many things can happen. And there's other thing you need to focus to make the maintenance life easy, right? Because implementing a system, it's not limited to just code the system and close your hand, right? No, because this complete system, you need to think how maintenance would work when the requirement change, how some other developer come and understand this code and add new feature. I always suggest when you design a system, when you go to a system, just think you go to work on a system where someone else has developed, and how you feel when you read that code, right? So always assign to you, then you can understand. Okay, when it comes to NestJS, before that, you need to make sure you subscribe to the channel and also follow my Facebook and Instagram so we can stay in touch, ask questions, give you ideas. Like I'm getting a bunch of ideas already. People saying go ahead with MongoDB for this course, and some people says go ahead with some SQL databases to understand or type ORM framework. We'll see what is the majority and we'll go with that. But I'm not much focusing on ORM, but rather I'm focusing on security, JWT token, security injection, and kind of thing on this course. Anyway, so in NestJS, you have a pipe implementation. You can use pipes to help to get this validation part, right? So in Angular, also we create our custom pipe, right? That one little bit different from this one, because there in Angular we use the pipe to format the data, but here we use the pipe to validate the data and also do some error handling, right? Error handling again is a part of the validation. If the validation fail, you do the errors, right? Okay, so the main thing you need to understand, NestJS comes with some built-in mechanism to integrate this pipe. In we have two different node packages called class validators and the transformer. These two packages give tons of built-in features you to get this work done, right? So if you take this one alone, like class validator, this class validator has so many inbuilt features, right? For example, it can see is null, is in, is array, is optional, is JWT, is decimal. Okay. I mean, you can see, you can validate your incoming data, right? So also you can see whether it's empty, is optional, right? Is boolean, is date, right? You can do tons of things, and also you can do some conditional validation. For example, if first name is not exist, see the second name is not null, right? That means if you want to say, okay, either first name or last name should exist, you can do that, right? You don't, I mean, if you say it's not empty, you must give first name and the last name both. But if you want to get either one, you can do a conditional validation, right? So this document is a very complete, in detail documentation. It explains itself, right? So you can just go through this documentation, but I'm going to show you a few validations, right, in practical. Okay. So let's go to our project. Okay, and okay, I'm going to stop it, and let's install these two dependencies to my project, right? So one is class validator. The second one is class transformer, right? I'm not going to use this much, but I'm going to install both. Okay, so if you use yarn, you can use your yarn syntaxes to get this, right? So let's go to package JSON and see whether this is installed. Okay, so what is pipe? Pipe is nothing but it is a class with injectable annotation. So that means you can inject it, right? So you can use the pipes in a variable level, or you can use a pipe on a method level, or else you can use a pipe in a global level. Global level means whatever the request comes to that service will the pipe will get invoked and validate. And if it's a method level, whatever the request come to that method will go through the pipe. And when it's a property level, you whatever the value assigned to get property will go through the pipe, right? So we'll see all the things, right? So when you create a pipe, you need to implement that is from a pipe transform interface. Pipe transform interface is an interface which has a transform method, right? So that means you need to implement that, right? So what NestJS does is whenever it sees the pipe, it go to the implementation and it execute your transform method, right? So within the transform method, you can decide whether you're going to continue. That means whatever the argument comes in, the values comes in, it is matching your requirement. So you can continue. If it doesn't match, you can reject it, and then a request will go back to consumer saying, okay, your properties, your values are not what I'm expecting. Okay. We'll see something very simple first and go back to some advanced one. So I'm going to go to this, let's say I'm going to this DTOs first, right? So I explained when I'm talking about the DTO. So DTO will really help to do the pipe validation as well, okay? So I'm going to get the employee, let's say this one, okay? Employee update DTO. Okay, let's go to controller and see how our employee create works. Okay, so create employee. Okay, so in the create employee, we just still taking these values as like individual values. We are not using the DTO here, right? So let me to convert this to DTO very fast. So since you know this, I'm not going to show you how I'm coding, but I'm going to convert this to a DTO, right? So how I'm going to do this? I'm going to add a new file called employee create DTO. Right, so come back here. I'm going to take these values directly as to employee DTO, and before that I'm going to go service method, then modify that as well. Right, from now we go back to control. I'm not explaining this in detail to you because you know how we can do that, because we did this last time. Here what I'm going to do is I'm going to take directly body, right, to employee create DTO. I'm done. So now go back to our service and delete previous method. Okay, so this one, I don't need this one anymore. Oops. Right, so I'm good. So let's run this program and see whether it's still working. Right, so let me to see by creating few employees whether this is working. Right, so I created 3 employees and I can call this and I can get these 3 employees. So now it's working. Okay, so now let's go and see this pipe validation, how we do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to this employee create decorator, and I'm going to tell I need first name and last name as a mandatory, right? So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to say is empty, right, is empty. Okay, so you need to make sure is empty. First one is I should be capital, because if it's a simple I with a is empty with a simple I start, then you need to pass the value into this decorator, right? So since you don't have the value is the variable itself, you need to use a capital I with is empty. Okay, right. So now I'm going to give is empty with a first name and last name is not optional. Those are mandatory, right? So let's go back, and this will not work, okay? So let's go back, and here I'm going to tell create employee. Okay, this is working. I'm going to put the first name empty. Still it will not work, right? So that's fine. It will create with the first name empty value, right? Technically it should not, because we are saying we need to make sure this is not empty, okay? Right. So let's go back here. So what we just modified the DTO, right? That is not enough. We need to tell controller, hey, go ahead and use this pipe when you create employees, okay? How you can do this? Use here, use pipe annotation, right? So use pipes annotation, decorator, right? So I mean in the Java world this is annotation. So when it comes to here is a decorator, right? Use pipe decorator. So what is the pipe you want to use? Validation pipe, okay? Because this is a built-in pipe what we have, so we don't need to tell anything, right? So the good thing here, this will take this and call the validation pipe, right? So do you think it's done yet? Okay, we'll see, right? So we'll see. So now I'm going to create employee with an empty field. Now it says last name must be empty. Oh, okay. I think I used the wrong decorator. Yeah, it should be is not empty, right? Is not empty. Okay. Right. Okay. It should be is not empty. Right. Let's copy and paste here. Okay. And sorry about the mistake. Right. So now if you send this, it say first name should not be empty. Okay. So let's put some value to here and try again. Yeah, now it's getting created. So now this time I'm going to keep the second name empty. So now it says last name should not be empty, right? So it's very easy, right? So you put the validation here, right? So let's say something different. I want to have a validation where this employee tier, okay, here it's in as employee tier, so that might be the problem, right? So let's try to send this, okay? So now it's created as a tier 2, right? So it's created as a tier 2. If you use something like tier 3, right? Tier 3, it will create a tier 3 as well, right? So but the problem is, let's say get told employee, so now they will have a different tiers, right? So tier 2, tier 3 and everything, right? The problem here, this employee tier just allowed only few tiers, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 0, right? But what if user sends something other than this, right? What if user sends something other than this? We need to validate that, right? So let's do that. How we can do it? I'm going to create a new pipe. Okay, I'm going to create a new pipe. I can create this manually, or I can use directly nest CLI, right? So nest generate what? A pipe, right? What's the pipe? Employee tier validation, right? So this is my pipe, okay? So I'm going to tell no spec. I don't need the spec file. So now it will create employee tier file, okay? So here it created employee tier validation pipe, okay? So now you can see it's created basic skeleton here, right? And you just need to do your thing. Here you don't need this metadata much, but see this one, okay? So we can do this in two different ways, right? Either you can directly inject employee into the employee tier, or you can directly inject through this method level, okay? So let's do how we can do that. I'll explain you how to do the both, okay? So what you can do is, let's just print the value first, okay? So console.log, here it's a value, right? I'm going to print the value, okay? So now this is little bit different than the last time, because this is our own custom implementation. So what I'm going to do here, right, go back to controller, and here on the create I'm going to do something like this, okay? So see here, I'm going to tell body, right, get the parameter called tier, right, and use employee tier validation pipe. Okay, employee tier validation pipe, use that here. Okay, and assign to tier, which is a string value. Okay, right, good. So now let's just run this and see what we get. So go back and just create employee. Right, so create employee with the tier 3. Right, here you will see tier 3 comes. Right, tier 3 comes. Right, we don't have something called tier 6. Right, so let's see this one first. And if you try to create with the tier 6, it will say tier 6. Right, but now what I'm going to do is a little change. Right, I'm going to do a little change. I'm going to remove this one here because I don't need to get tier separately. But rather I'm going to use here another use pipe. Right, you can use anything you want. Right, new employee tier validation pipe. Right, okay. So now we'll see what it will print as a value. Right, now let's see. Right, last time it printed just the value. Right, so now if you will see, it print entire object. Right, it print my entire object as its value. Right, so now it's up to you how you use this. If you just need to extract the particular one, it's fine. But let's say you want to implement in general validations here, right? So you have multiple validations to do. So then it's okay to take the entire payload here and do your validation, right? Of course, then your name has to change. Okay. So now let's put some logic here, right? I'm going to do if value dot tier, right, in employee tier, and then that means it's fine, right? So that means it's fine, but I need if it is not in, right? So I want if it is not in here. So what you need to do is throw new bad request exception, right? We can say let's send the tier what user send. Okay, so you can customize this like this. If not, right, if not, it will throw a direct message, right? I'll show you that as well. Okay, so now I'm going to create this. Tier 6 is not a valid tier, right? So if I not add this message, right, if I not add this message, see what happened, right? If I not add this message, it just say bad request. Okay, it just say bad request. Okay, cool. So now what happened if I send something with a valid value, right? So something with a valid value. So now it will create. So what happens here, you need to understand this. Request come and hit to the controller, right? Request come and hit to the controller. Okay, in the controller you are saying pass this request to two different pipes. One is a validation pipe, other one is an employee tier validation pipe, right? So validation pipe will pass, then employee tier validation pipe, it will send the entire payload, right? So for example, I can add one more validation pipe if you want, right? For example, let's say something like this. I want to make sure no one create a CEO designation here, because CEO not something you can assign, right? So I can use okay, so not here, employee, create employee DTO, right? So let's come here. So not equal, right? So not equals to CEO, right? So now if you put the designation as a CEO, it will tell, okay, let's try something like this. So designation is a manager, it's fine. Okay, so let's create a designation as a CEO. Okay, so then it said designation should not equal to CEO. So you can use something like, if you want to stop multiple designation like a chairman, CEO and so forth, you can use something like a not in, right? So I'm just showing demonstration here. and you can use whatever the properties it mentioned in this documentation, right? You can use any of these decorators to use validate your data very easily, right? Okay, so let's assume, like, I mean, we already done something like that here in the employee validation pipe, right? So ideally you need to, I mean, if you need to get this really working, you need to convert this to uppercase, right? I'm not focusing here because it's fine. Okay, so here you can see we throw a bad request exception, right? So likewise, we can throw this exception from anywhere you want, right? But the matter is whether you are, I mean, this is work in all the places, right? Or do you need to repeat this? Technically speaking, ideally, you should handle your exception on controller. But what the Nest does is, if when you throw an exception, like let's say it go from service will bubble up to controller. Let's say controller you don't handle with the try catch, then it go directly to the Nest container, and then it return it sent to caller. Okay, right. So now let me to show you what I mean, right? So in the controller here, in the last video we throw not found exception, right? On the delete record we throw not found exception, but that means whenever you don't have a record to delete, it will say not found. Okay, so we have in this service layer, right, we have multiple, let me to close this one, right? So we have multiple search, right? You have a get employee by ID. So this one using the update employee, right? And here we don't use the delete, right? So you can see here it uses two places, right? But in future maybe someone else is again use a get employee by ID, right? So if you put this error message onto the controller saying if there is no employee return, right, you can do that, right? Here you can come back to let's close this thing for a moment. Okay, so you can like come back to controller and you can tell here, right, on the get employee, okay, hey, if there is no employee, right, if there is no employee, I can say not found exception. But the problem is then when you try to update non-existing employee, then that non-existing employee you need to handle separately, right? You understand, right? So for example, let me just show directly. So you can put it here, you can assign this one to like this, right? So you can put something like this, right? And you can check here, if employee is empty, then you can throw not found exception. But you need to pay your attention before you do something like this. Why? Because in a service layer, your update also, right? In a service layer, your update also call the get employee by ID, right? So it's better to handle in a single place. Okay, let's try. Okay, so go back to find employee method, or here get employee, right? It says I'm going to, without returning this, I'm going to assign this to employee. Okay, employee. And here if employee, okay, here if employee is not exists, if there is no employee, then throw new not found exception. Okay, so you can directly tell this does not exist. Okay, right, cool. So now you return here if not employee. Okay, here you return employee. Okay, cool. So now what happened here? Okay, what happened here? Okay, so let's create an employee. Okay, okay, so validation fail. Okay, let's say engineer. Okay, so I'm going to create 3 employees, right? Get all employee. It's working, right? I have 3 employees, and I'm going to copy this particular one employee ID, and I'm going to return get employee by ID, right? I'm going to return call this get employee by ID. Okay, so now I can get a particular employee, right? So now I am going to call some non-existing ID, right, like this. So now it will tell you, okay, so this employee ID does not exist, right? I mean, there is a small mistake here, but that's fine. Just don't focus that. It does not exist, right? So now I'm going to update a non-existing employee, right? Now employee city, right? So now when I call that, that to also give me error saying employee not exists, right, to update, right? So you can see here, I changed the I validate is a one place, but it validated automatically on other places as well when you're using this, right? So the cases like this, it's okay. You throw your exception from your service, right? Then what happened? Since there is no handling mechanism within the controller, it will propagate and then it will go as a valid exception, right? So valid error message to the consumer. So you need to focus that when you're handling errors. Okay, so let's do one more thing, so then we will understand this properly. Here we have employee search, right? So employee search, we come with the employee search DTO, right? Correct? So what if we do something like this? Okay, so let's go employee get all employees. I want to get employees where the status is active, right? So it will get all the status, right? That doesn't matter, right? Status equal active, right? So let's say status equal active, right? So now it will get all the three employees, right? So let's say I am trying to use some status where status does not exist, right? This is not a valid status, right? Of course you won't get any records, but then I don't know whether there are no users from this status or this is not a valid status, right? So I'm confused. So what I'm going to do is how we can fix this. We have DTO. So that is why I was saying using the DTO is really helpful when you do the validation, right? So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the status should be in, right? So status should in object dot values employee status. Okay, so this should be, the object should be in employee status, right? So let's see what it says. Oh, okay, so this is the interface, so let me to convert this to a class. Okay, so I explained this difference between interfaces and classes before, so I'm not going to worry about it. So we are done? No, we are not done. Why? Because still the search controller, the search method don't understand this way, right, to use this pipe. Okay, so here what we need to do is we need to tell use pipes. So what is the pipe? It's a validation pipe. Okay, so now we are good, right? So now we are good. So I'm going to create few employees. 1, 2, 3. I'm creating 3 employees, and I'm going to get with the non-existing employee. So it says status must be one of the following: active, suspended, and resign. Okay, active, suspended, and resign. Okay, so now if I use active, so then I will get my results. I mean I can do multiple validations like this, but I hope you understand the concept behind and how we use this validation and how you can use your custom pipes to implementation, and what is the chain of this custom pipe, where the request goes and everything, right? I hope you will good with this. Okay, so that means now you have an application with full-fledged functionalities as well as validated and the proper error handling. Okay, so we'll see you in the next video. Till that, make sure you share this video with your friends, and also make sure you follow me on the Instagram and Facebook so we can stay in touch. You can ask questions and I can answer if time permits. Take care, stay safe.